He suddenly burst into laughter, a cold and terrifying sound that carried an overt threat. Then, he reached into his mouth with a finger, pressed hard, and pulled it out, smiling at everyone. "Didn't the special investigation team find potassium cyanide at my house?" I said in my statement that I had planned to use it to kill Vincent Fan and his wife, but later considered that the effect of potassium cyanide was too fast and chose arsenic trioxide instead. Actually, I was lying. You will soon know its real purpose. He bit down hard on his teeth. At that moment, the room fell silent, everyone's eyes fixed on Chase Chin's abnormal behavior. Xander Su's heart collapsed in that instant. He remembered seeing Chase Chin at the fast food restaurant, where Chin had not eaten, claiming he had just had a tooth pulled. It turned out. In an instant, he realized why Chin had his tooth pulled. He had hidden the deadly poison, potassium cyanide, in his false tooth to end his own life at the last moment. This was why Chase Chin had told him that he was not afraid of the police's torture during interrogation. The police dared not and would not torture him, claiming he had double insurance. One layer of insurance was that he was in the late stages of brain cancer, which the police dared not aggravate. On the other hand, he considered that if the police still tortured him, and he could not bear the torment, he could use the poison in his mouth to end his own life. What a double insurance! From the moment Chase Chin bit through the potassium cyanide to his convulsions and subsequent death, the entire process lasted only a few minutes. The scene was chaotic. The court officers tried to pull Chin's body off the ground in an attempt to save him, but of course, to no avail. Even if a professional doctor had been present, swallowing a high dose of potassium cyanide would have been just as fatal. Chase Chin was fully aware of this before his death. Before his final convulsions, his face bore a smile, because at that moment, all his plans had been accomplished. He made everyone believe that he had an accomplice. If he had no accomplice, being gay, why would he seek revenge for Jasmine Gone? It's known that Chase Chin hardly interacted with girls during college, and there was no recollection of him having any relationship with Jasmine Gone. If he had no accomplice, why choose a more risky method to move the body after killing Jiang Xiaobing? If he had no accomplice, why was the figure seen riding the electric scooter much slimmer when killing the Li and Fan families? If he had no accomplice, how could he have managed to kill the Fan family on December 22nd while he was staying in the Pujung hotel room all along, with hotel surveillance as evidence? If he had no accomplice, why bother to destroy toothbrushes, towels, and other DNA-carrying items, but unable to clean all the hair on the floor of his home? If he truly wanted to harm Xander Su, why weren't the cigars all rigged with TNT? After this, the police would definitely reinvestigate his accomplice. They would check the Pujung hotel records and clearly see through the 8th floor corridor surveillance that Chase Chin entered the room on the evening of December 21st and did not leave until 9 a.m. on December 22nd. During this period, he did not leave room 806. But when the police tried to investigate who his accomplice really was, they would find it impossible because there were no clues to his accomplice. Chase Chin was dead, and no one could take his statement anymore. Even if they investigated Chin's homosexual relationships, they would come up empty. Because Chase Chin, in fact, had no accomplice. Xander Su covered his face and sighed for Chase Chin, also unclear on who Chin's accomplice could be. But in an instant, he remembered the conversation when Chin first returned to the country. At that time, Chase Chin told him that Jasmine Gone had at least 2 wishes. First, she didn't want her son to live a life of constant fear and bullying. She didn't want her son's life to be ruined. Second, the instigators were not dead yet. The 3 who were blown up, I inquired, were just pawns. Yes, everything Chase Chin did was for Jasmine Gone's 2 last wishes. The second wish, Chase Chin had already killed Vincent Fan and his wife, and Zhang Hongba. Jasmine Gone's direct enemies were all dead. But what about Jasmine Gone's first wish? To protect her child. Chase Chin had thought of countless ways to protect her child, but none were feasible. Because Jasmine Gone had killed a Jiang Ping, he had to take revenge for Jasmine Gone and kill the remaining enemies. There was no doubt that his motive for the crime would be exposed. What to do after the motive for the crime was exposed? Chase Chin indeed had a way to commit the crime flawlessly, to escape back to the United States, and live out the remaining few months of his life. But the motive for the crime could not be hidden. Such a result would only lead to the families of the enemies continuing to retaliate against the He family like Jiang Ping and Li Gang's families did. People can't be killed off, just like the Fan family, who had the power to cover the sky in Jing County. If they wanted to destroy a family, to make a child's life a tragedy, they could easily do it. Who would dare to interfere? No one dared to interfere with the Fan family's retaliatory actions, which he had fully understood when he saw Jiang Ping and Li Gang's families attacking the He family. For revenge, causing the living to suffer from the bullying of the enemy's families, Jasmine Gone, if she had a spirit in heaven, would surely regret and be saddened. Chase-Chin thought about how to fulfill Jasmine Gone's first wish to protect her child. After much thought, there was only one way: to sacrifice himself, to create a non-existent accomplice. To keep the Fan family forever deterred, so they would not dare to bully the He family again. That accomplice was the most important person to him, the friend he was willing to protect with his life. Only if the police could never find this accomplice could Jasmine Gone's first wish be fulfilled. So he had to make a big case, and after being caught, provide sufficient reasons for the police to believe he committed the crime alone. And at the last chance in court, in front of provincial, city, and county leaders, in front of the Fan family, in his final defense, reveal the forever uncatchable accomplice and make an overt threat, so that no one would dare to trouble the He family again. Wouldn't it work otherwise? No. From the beginning of the case, his motive for the crime would be exposed, and the police would sooner or later find out it was him. Even if he escaped back to the United States to spend the rest of his time, the police would sooner or later, by eliminating Jasmine Gone's classmates one by one, find his entry and exit information and discover he had returned to the country after the case occurred. If the case was exposed as his doing, would the Fan family let go of the He family's grandmother and grandson? Even if he created signs of another accomplice in the crime, those signs were not solid evidence. If the police could not find his accomplice after a long time, they would definitely conclude the case was done by him alone. Only at the last moment, in front of everyone, presenting ironclad evidence of another uncaught accomplice, could he completely deter everyone. This was feasible, and the only way. Was there another way? If in a normal society, the law would sanction the Fan family. But was it possible in Jin County? Jiang Ping brutally killed He Jiansheng. Was he sanctioned? Afterwards, when they found the He family, even attacking the young child, did the police intervene? No, they did not intervene, did not want to, dared not, and could not, because their network of relationships was too terrifying. The only thing Chase-Chin could do was to take this path, to sacrifice himself, to perfectly fulfill Jasmine Gone's two wishes. No one would know how Chase-Chin did it. Xander Su could not figure out how Chen managed to create a non-existent friend. Especially on December 22nd, when killing Vincent Fan, the police's subsequent investigation would find the clear facial features of Chase-Chin entering room 806, thus forming a firm alibi. This was a piece of ironclad evidence meticulously designed by Chase-Chin. He had 3 identity cards. Besides the one used for buying cars and houses, he booked room 806 with his real identity card, and then booked the upstairs room 906 with a second fake identity card. At night, under the cover of darkness, he first went to room 906, the top floor. He hung a soft ladder and a safety belt from the window. That day was a snowy day, and Chase-Chin had known from the weather forecast a few days earlier that no one would see such a scene on a snowy night on the top floor room. Then, he went to room 806, secured himself with the safety belt, climbed up the soft ladder into room 906, collected the safety belt and soft ladder afterward, and stayed in room 906 all night. The next morning, when committing the crime, he left room 906, and after makeup and dressing up, wearing a hat, left the hotel, so the hotel's lobby surveillance could not capture his face. After the crime, he returned to room 906 of the hotel, climbed back to 806 using the same method, and was not seen by anyone on this snowy day. Afterward, he waited until 9 a.m. before leaving room 806 in broad daylight, thus creating a firm alibi. Of course, he considered that if the police had extremely smart individuals, they would suspect he committed the crime alone and thought of the possibility of switching between upstairs and downstairs to create an alibi. Well, if there really were such extremely smart police officers, the police would still come up empty. Because the police would find that the surveillance on the 9th floor might have been accidentally moved by a cleaner's mop, unable to capture the footage of room 906. Thus completely unable to confirm whether Chase-Chin used the method of moving between upstairs and downstairs to create an alibi of being in room 806. And the identity card he registered for room 906 upon investigation indeed belonged to someone, but further investigation would reveal it was not. But based on this, could it be concluded that Chase-Chin had no accomplice and everything before his death was just a bluff? No way. It's easy to prove the existence of something logically, just find that thing. But to prove the non-existence of something? Very difficult. Just like you can't find evidence to prove God doesn't exist. If they couldn't find Chase Chin's accomplice, could they say Chase Chin was bluffing and didn't have an accomplice at all? Unable to find the accomplice simply because Chase Chin protected them too well, there were too few clues, and Chase Chin's final defense in court was irrefutable, with all evidence pointing to him having another accomplice. Through the subsequent autopsy, the police would discover that Chase Chin's anal sphincter was relaxed, a condition he had caused in the previous weeks. Therefore, the detention center staff would tell Xander Sue that Chase Chin had been moaning while using the toilet, thinking it was cancer acting up, but in fact, it was not. Instead, he had painfully expanded his anus to create irrefutable evidence of his homosexuality. And when the police questioned Chase Chin's classmates, all their statements would indicate that he had never had any contact with females throughout his college years. In fact, that was due to his inferiority complex during college, which had nothing to do with homosexuality. He had also never been in a relationship during his many years in the United States. This was because he had always been deeply in love with Jasmine Gone. But the police would definitely think he was homosexual. As for the man riding the electric scooter who killed the Lee and Fan families, it was undoubtedly Chase Chin himself. He just wore tight, thin clothes and hunched over while riding, creating the visual impression that it wasn't Chase Chin. In fact, Chase Chin's confession of the crime process at the police station was the truth. Therefore, the lie detector test proved he was not lying. The only thing fabricated was his motive for the crime and his relationship with Jasmine Gone. He risked a higher danger to dispose of River's body, undoubtedly to create solid, irrefutable evidence of having another accomplice in every subsequent crime. His entire crime plan was astonishing. He committed the crimes alone but made it appear like a joint crime during the police investigation. Moreover, after being caught, he could provide ample evidence and reasonable explanations to make the police abandon the judgment of the case being a joint crime. Finally, in the last defense in court, he could list an even more solid chain of evidence to overturn the previous explanations. The triple-layered motive nested in a crime plan, and each layer of motive needed sufficient evidence to support it, with each layer able to find even more solid evidence to overturn the previous layer's motive. What tremendous intelligence this required, what exquisite planning. Yet, he did it. Chase Chin achieved his ultimate plan. Only in this way could he make a naked threat at the end. Although I'm going in, my friend is still out there. Those who have troubled the He family should be careful. Haha. Later facts proved that Chase Chin won this round. All the victims' families, including the Fan family, dared not trouble the He family anymore, and they kept silent about the He family's affairs. One reason for this was that everyone cherishes their own life, especially after witnessing these 4 brutal murders, and knowing that another murderer was still at large, never caught by the police. They also learned that Chase Chin was not avenging Jasmine Gone, but the uncaught murderer was the real avenger for Jasmine Gone. It was like the sword of Damocles, always hanging over their heads, making them much more restrained in their actions and leaving room for everything. On the other hand, when provincial, city, and county leaders held an emergency meeting to discuss capturing the other murderer and protecting the victim's relatives, they all issued instructions that the relatives must never harass the He family again, or the public security organs would arrest them and prosecute them strictly according to the law. This was an instruction from the provincial leaders, and of course, the subordinates had to listen. No leader wanted new developments in this case, and everyone wanted to turn this page as soon as possible. Whether it was to cleanly turn the page or muddle through, as time faded, there absolutely could not be any more incidents. What surprised Xander Sue the most was that in the last moments of Chase Chin's life, he not only sacrificed himself but also labeled himself as homosexual for Jasmine Gone's 2 wishes. Xander Sue was clear that Chase Chin was never homosexual. He had been deeply in love with Jasmine Gone for over a decade. How could he be homosexual? It was precisely because he loved Jasmine Gone that he had never been in a relationship all these years. He did not hesitate to ruin his own reputation, labeling himself differently to create another accomplice, fulfilling Jasmine Gone's wishes. But Xander Sue could never understand why someone like Chase Chin could love Jasmine Gone for so many years. More importantly, everyone, including Jasmine Gone herself, did not know there was such a person silently loving her. Chase Chin had never confessed to Jasmine Gone, and from beginning to end, he and Jasmine Gone had hardly spoken a few words. Chase Chin also never let Xander Sue tell Jasmine Gone about his love for her. Xander Su's visits to Jasmine Gone during holidays were not because he had feelings for her, but to know about her well-being for his old friend. Jasmine Gone never knew Chase-chin loved her so deeply. In her world, there might not even be a place for someone like Chase-chin. But in Chase-chin's world, it was all about her. This secret, perhaps, was known only to Chase-chin, forever carried into the smile he had before his death. Chase-chin would always remember that story. When he first entered college, he was skinny and ugly, with poor academic performance, never noticed by anyone. He felt very inferior, extremely inferior, feeling that all of life, all of the future was dark. Watching his classmates being lively and cheerful, enjoying the freedom of college and the anticipation of the future, he could not bear it even more. He felt that was the most unbearable time of his life. He even thought about suicide to end this uninteresting life. That night, he was in the woods behind the school, facing a tree, while quietly weeping and sobbing. He took off his pants and did that thing to the tree. This was his only way to vent. Unfortunately, Jasmine Gone happened to pass by at that time and saw this scene, scaring her away immediately. Chase-chin was extremely panicked, and he became completely disheartened about the future. The next day, probably all the classmates would know, and he would have no face to live on. He didn't sleep all night, thinking about how to end his life all night. The next day, he went to class disheartenedly. Before class, Jasmine Gone passed by him, smiled at him, nodded, and secretly handed him an envelope. He opened it fearfully and saw a few lines of beautiful handwriting. "Don't worry, I didn't see anything. I think you must have a lot of troubles. I hope you can communicate more with everyone usually. If you have any difficulties, I believe your classmates will be eager to help you. Of course, I will too. I hope you can come out of your low spirits soon and become a cheerful, positive person, loving your tomorrow." Loving your tomorrow, Chase-chin's eyes filled with tears. He carefully folded the letter and put it in his backpack, keeping it all the time. He turned his head and looked at Jasmine Gone sitting on the other side. Jasmine Gone gave him a kind smile and made a cheering gesture with her hand. This smile, Chase-chin would never forget. It was the smile of an angel, the most beautiful smile in the world. From that day on, Chase-chin's life changed. He began to have hopes for the future. He began to study hard, hoping that through effort, tomorrow would definitely be better. Later, he secretly sent Jasmine Gone a letter, with only the words "thank you" written on it. Perhaps for Jasmine Gone, this little thing was nothing, and she probably had long forgotten it. But Chase-chin would never forget. If not for that encouragement, he might have chosen to end his life prematurely. His entire life was given by this angel. He deeply loved this angel, not wanting to become the other half of this angel, but just wanting this angel to live happily forever. When he learned that Jasmine Gone got married, Chase-chin was sincerely happy for her. When he learned that Jasmine Gone had a child, Chase-chin was as happy as if he had a child himself. Across the ocean, there was always a steadfast heart waiting for her beautiful life. It's just that Jasmine Gone would never know all of this. The courtroom was chaotic, and various personnel were dealing with the aftermath. Xander Su quietly left, his heart trembling, his heart crying. Just stepping out of the courthouse, Xander Su received a call from his girlfriend. "Hey, I heard from my dad that there was a problem at the court hearing, and he is dealing with it now. What happened?" Xander Su pursed his lips, unwilling to answer. Nothing serious. Was Chase-chin sentenced? Sentenced. Death penalty executed immediately? His girlfriend still held a grudge against the murderer who almost made her lose her husband. Pretty much, Xander Su replied weakly, and after a moment, he laughed and said something inexplicable, but he should be pretty good now. Then he hung up the phone. Yes, Chase-chin's goal was achieved. He should be pretty good. At least he was happy before he died. But isn't all of this a tragedy from beginning to end? He Jian was beaten to death because of his stubbornness. Jasmine Gone paid with her life for He Jian. Lu Weiguo was sacrificed for no reason. Li Gang's life clock was rewritten. River paid the price for his actions. The Jiang family, Li family, and Fan family were wiped out because of this. Zhang Hongba died with his eyes open. Chase-chin also closed his eyes. Greg Wang's career came to an end. But what is the root of all these tragedies? Xander Su walked down the steps, and when he walked down the last step of the Jean County People's Court, he found the answer. On the concrete platform stood a giant marble globe, engraved with two big characters, Law. Haha, what a joke the law is. He finally found the answer.